The room was buzzing with polite chatter, the soft clinking of glasses, and the faint hum of background music that always seemed to accompany these corporate gatherings. She moved through it with practiced ease, wearing a tailored suit that made her look every bit the powerful CEO she was. Her eyes scanned the crowd, nodding politely at familiar faces, exchanging small smiles and brief pleasantries. She was used to these events, used to the controlled environment where everyone played their part perfectly, and she had mastered the art of appearing engaged even when her mind was elsewhere. She felt a small sense of relief as she found a spot near the refreshments, hoping for a moment of quiet. These events could be exhausting, and she had learned to conserve her energy whenever possible. As she poured herself a glass of water, her attention was drawn to a figure in the corner, someone who did not quite belong in the polished, curated environment of executives and socialites. He was setting up a piano, an old upright with a few scratches on its surface that spoke of many years of use. He wore simple clothes, a casual shirt, and worn jeans, and his hands moved over the keys in preparation, as if the piano were a friend he had known forever. Curiosity piqued. She watched from a distance. There was something about the way he approached the piano that made her pause. He was focused but not in a tense way. There was a calmness in his movements that seemed almost deliberate. The event staff hovered nearby, unsure if this was part of the planned entertainment, but he seemed entirely unaware of their presence, absorbed in his own world. The first notes floated into the room, delicate and hesitant, yet full of a quiet strength. It was not the kind of performance one would expect at a corporate gala. There were no grand flourishes or dramatic pauses, only a melody that seemed to grow naturally from the piano itself. People began to take notice, conversations slowing, eyes turning toward the corner where the music came from. The single dad played with a gentle touch, his fingers dancing across the keys in a way that spoke of familiarity and love for the instrument. She felt a strange tug at her chest. The melody was familiar, though she could not place it immediately. It was as if a memory had been tucked away for years, and these notes were unlocking it carefully, gently. She froze for a moment, glass in hand, as the music wrapped around her. It was a song from her past, one she had not thought about in a long time, a melody that had been written for her by someone she had once cared for deeply. Her heart quickened, and a wave of nostalgia washed over her, bringing back the laughter, the dreams, and the quiet moments that had once seemed so important. The single dad continued to play, unaware of the effect his music had on her. His eyes were closed at times, his face serene, as if he were sharing a secret with the piano rather than performing for an audience. There was a softness to his playing, a sincerity that made it impossible not to be drawn in. The crowd began to thin slightly, some people moving closer, some simply pausing in their tracks, all sensing that this was more than just background music. She took a slow step closer, her curiosity overpowering her usual reserve. Each note struck a chord within her, echoing memories she had long buried. She remembered the young man who had written this song, the evenings they had spent together when the world seemed simpler and the future full of possibilities. She had not heard this melody in years, and hearing it now, played by a stranger, felt surreal. It was as if time had folded in on itself, and she was momentarily transported back to that place where emotions were raw and unfiltered. The single dad's hands moved with ease, yet there was an intensity in his focus that suggested he poured a part of himself into every note. It was not just technical skill. It was emotion, experience, and perhaps even longing. She watched him, fascinated by the contrast between his simplicity and the depth of feeling in his music. There was a quiet dignity in his presence, a sense that he had lived a life full of challenges yet found a way to hold on to beauty and passion. As the melody swelled, the room seemed to hold its breath. Conversations stopped entirely in some corners, replaced by the shared experience of listening. She noticed the subtle reactions of others, the way a hand would rest on a shoulder, a slight nod of appreciation, the closing of eyes to fully absorb the sound. Music had a way of bridging gaps, of connecting people in ways words often could not. She felt a strange kinship with this man she had just noticed, though they had not spoken a word to each other. The song reached a quiet passage, soft and introspective, and she could feel her own thoughts wandering. She wondered about his life, about the moments that had led him to this piano tonight. Was he playing for someone in the room, or simply for himself? There was a purity to his performance, a lack of pretense that was both refreshing and disarming. In a world where appearances often mattered more than substance, his authenticity was striking. She took another step closer, drawn by an impulse she could not explain. Her professional demeanor felt distant, irrelevant in the face of such a simple yet profound moment. She realized that this was not just music. It was a story being told through sound, a narrative of emotion that transcended language. The memories it stirred within her were vivid, painting scenes from her past with startling clarity. She could almost hear his voice, remember the way he had smiled, the way he had looked at her when he composed this very song. It was a connection she had thought lost, resurrected by the unexpected performance of a stranger. The single dad's playing became more confident, yet never overpowering. Each note was deliberate, each chord resonating with a gentle power that drew in everyone around. She found herself holding her breath at times, as though afraid to break the spell that had descended upon the room. It was rare to encounter something so genuine, something that bypassed the superficial layers of life and reached straight for the heart. Time seemed to stretch and bend. Minutes passed, yet it felt as if hours had condensed into this single, shared moment. She realized that she was not alone in her reaction. Glances exchanged among nearby guests revealed a similar recognition, a shared understanding of the beauty and emotion being conveyed. The music created a space where everyone was equal, where social status and titles melted away, leaving only the raw, unfiltered, human experience. As the final notes lingered in the air, the room exhaled collectively. She stood still, almost afraid to move, savoring the echo that remained in the space. The single dad slowly lifted his hands from the keys, opening his eyes and finally noticing the audience he had attracted. His gaze met hers for a fleeting moment, and she felt a jolt, a recognition that was hard to explain. There was a calm strength in his eyes, a warmth that invited trust and connection. People began to clap, softly at first, then with more enthusiasm. She joined in, though her mind was still wrapped in the layers of memory and emotion that the song had unearthed. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, to understand how he had come to know this melody. But for now, she simply watched, captivated by the man who had unknowingly opened a door to her past. The event moved on as events always do, but she found herself lingering, stealing glances at the piano at him. There was a story here. She could feel it. One that had begun long before tonight and had the potential to unfold in ways she could not yet predict. Her heart was racing, her thoughts tangled with recollections and newfound curiosity. She realized that sometimes, life had a way of surprising you when you least expected it, and that a single melody could carry the weight of years, rekindling emotions thought to be long forgotten. She finally approached him, her steps cautious but determined. He looked up, offering a polite smile, unaware of the impact he had just made. Words seemed inadequate, but she managed a simple, heartfelt comment about the beauty of his playing. He nodded, a humble acknowledgement, and she sensed that he was not seeking praise, only sharing a part of himself through the music he loved. In that brief interaction, something shifted. The boundaries of her structured, controlled life felt a little looser. The rigid walls of professionalism softened by the unexpected warmth of human connection. She realized that she had been holding on to memories without really engaging with them, and tonight, through a melody played by a stranger, those memories had found a voice once more. The night had only just begun, and already it promised a story far richer than any meeting or contract could offer. A story that might just change the course of her life in ways she could not yet imagine. The single dad packed up his piano carefully, securing the small stand for the sheet music and making sure no keys were left exposed. He moved with quiet efficiency, his movements deliberate but relaxed. The music he had played still lingered in the air, wrapping the space in a warm, lingering echo that made it impossible for anyone who had heard it to remain unaffected. The CEO stood a few steps away, watching him, still feeling a strange mixture of nostalgia and curiosity that she couldn't quite name. She had never expected a melody to have such a sudden, powerful effect, and the memory it awakened seemed both distant and immediate all at once. The room slowly returned to its usual rhythm of conversation and polite laughter, but she felt detached from it. Her mind kept replaying the tune, each note weaving itself into her thoughts, stirring up memories of her first love. She remembered the way he had looked at her when he had written it, the tender moments they had shared, the dreams they had quietly whispered to each other. The song had been more than music. It had been a promise, a language between two hearts that only they could understand. She stepped closer to him, curiosity outweighing the usual caution that guided her interactions in professional settings. He was placing the sheet music into his bag, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips as he noticed her approach. Their eyes met briefly, and she felt an inexplicable connection, like a thread stretching across time and circumstance. There was nothing overt in his expression, no recognition of the past, yet it was enough to make her heart race. "I don't think I've ever heard that melody live before," she said softly, careful to keep her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. "It's beautiful. Do you play often?" He looked at her, slightly surprised but friendly. "I play whenever I can. Music is just something I've always loved. It's a way to tell stories without words." She nodded, thinking about how accurate that description was. His playing had told her a story she hadn't even realized she was waiting to hear. She felt the urge to ask how he had learned the song, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply said, "It brought back memories for me. Memories I hadn't thought about in years." His eyes softened, and he gave a small, understanding smile. "Music has a way of doing that. Sometimes it finds you when you least expect it." She studied him quietly, taking in the lines of his face, the calm confidence in his movements, and the gentleness in his demeanor. He seemed like someone who had faced challenges and yet found a way to carry himself with humility and grace. She felt a mixture of intrigue and admiration, wondering about the life he led, the experiences that had shaped him, and the stories that remained unspoken. "Do you perform often at events like this?" she asked, trying to bridge the gap between casual conversation and genuine interest. "Not really," he replied. "I mostly play for my child or at small local events. Tonight, I was invited to help with the music here. I didn't expect to make much of an impression, honestly." She smiled faintly. "Well, you certainly did. It was more than just music. It felt personal in a way that surprised me." He shrugged modestly, as if brushing off the compliment, but there was a quiet pride in his eyes. "I try to play with feeling. It's not about technique or showmanship. It's about connecting, even if it's just for a moment." She nodded, understanding completely. Music had always had that power over her, but she had never encountered someone who could wield it so naturally, without pretense. It was refreshing and a little disarming, especially in a world where people were so often measured by titles and accomplishments. For a few moments, they stood in silence, listening to the residual echoes of the melody. The atmosphere around them felt suspended, as if the room had contracted to hold just the two of them and the memories awakened by the music. She wondered what kind of life he led, what joys and struggles filled his days. There was a sincerity in him that was rare, and she found herself wanting to know more. "Do you mind if I ask, where did you learn that song?" she asked finally, unable to contain her curiosity any longer. He paused, considering the question. "It's a song I came across years ago. A friend of mine found the sheet music, and it stuck with me. I never knew it would mean so much to someone else." Her breath caught in her throat. "It means a lot to me. That melody. It was written for me years ago. I never thought I'd hear it again, let alone played like this." He blinked, surprised but intrigued. "That's remarkable. Music really does have a way of finding its way into unexpected places, doesn't it?" She nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. There was something about the way he spoke, the calm confidence and gentle respect in his tone, that made her feel comfortable in a way she hadn't in years. It was as if, in this brief encounter, They had crossed paths in the most meaningful way possible, guided by a melody that had survived time and circumstance. As the evening progressed, they found themselves walking slowly through the event, talking quietly about music, life, and the small joys that often went unnoticed in the rush of daily responsibilities. She learned that he was a single parent, devoted to his child, balancing work and life with quiet determination. She admired the way he spoke of his responsibilities without complaint, the pride he took in the little victories, and the patience he carried even in difficult moments. In turn, he listened to her stories of the corporate world, the challenges of leadership, and the constant pressure to maintain control and composure. She found it refreshing to speak with someone who did not measure her by her title or accomplishments, who simply engaged with her as a person. There was an ease to the conversation, a natural flow that made the hours slip by unnoticed. At one point, they paused near a quiet corner, away from the chatter and movement. The single dad leaned slightly against the piano he had brought, and she realized how grounding his presence felt. The memory of the melody lingered between them, a silent thread connecting past and present, familiarity and curiosity. It was a delicate balance of emotion and reality, something neither of them fully understood, but both felt deeply. She asked him about his child, genuinely interested in his life beyond the music. He spoke softly, with pride and affection, about the small moments that brought joy, the laughter, the learning, the quiet evenings spent together. She could see the depth of his love and the careful attention he gave to shaping a life filled with warmth and stability despite challenges. It was evident that he was someone who valued connection, integrity, and the simple truths of daily life. She shared some of her own experiences, though cautiously, aware of the protective walls she had built over the years. There was a vulnerability in her stories, a hint of longing for moments that had passed and opportunities that had been lost. Yet, in this unexpected encounter, she felt safe to reveal fragments of herself that she rarely showed to anyone in her professional world. As the night drew on, they found themselves laughing over small anecdotes, the shared humor bridging the gap between strangers and kindred spirits. There was a lightness in the air, a sense of possibility that neither had anticipated when the evening began. The melody that had first brought them together remained an invisible bond, a reminder that life sometimes unfolded in ways that were both unpredictable and deeply meaningful. When it was time to leave, the single dad offered a warm smile, a gesture that conveyed both respect and a quiet sense of hope. She felt a tug at her heart, realizing that this encounter was something rare, a moment that might linger in memory for years to come. She thanked him, expressing gratitude not just for the music, but for the way it had reminded her of her own capacity to feel deeply and to connect with another person in an authentic way. As she walked away, the notes of the melody seemed to echo in her mind, a gentle reminder of the power of music and human connection. She realized that life could still surprise her, that meaningful encounters could happen when least expected, and that sometimes a single moment could open a door to something much larger. The memory of the single dad, his music, and the emotions it had stirred would stay with her, a quiet, persistent thread running through the days that followed. She looked back once, catching a glimpse of him packing up the piano, his expression calm and focused. The world around them had returned to its usual rhythm, but for both of them, something subtle had shifted. A story had begun, guided by the gentle pull of a melody, and neither of them could yet know where it would lead. Yet, in that moment, there was clarity. Some connections were timeless, some memories could be rekindled, and some melodies could speak louder than words ever could. The following days passed with a strange mix of routine and reflection for her. Despite her busy schedule, the memory of the melody lingered, echoing in her mind at unexpected moments. It was not just the music itself, but the presence of the man who had played it with such quiet sincerity. She found herself thinking about him, wondering how someone so unassuming could leave such a strong impression. She felt a pull she had not expected, a curiosity about a life so different from her own, yet somehow familiar. Meanwhile, he returned to his usual routine, balancing work, parenting, and the small joys of life with his child. Yet, even for him, that night had left a mark. The CEO's reaction had been unexpected, a mix of recognition and emotion that hinted at stories untold. He found himself wondering what it must have been like for her to hear that melody again, to have memories awakened that had long been tucked away. He did not see her as someone distant or unapproachable, but as a person whose life had intersected with his in a meaningful, albeit brief, way. One afternoon, she found herself returning to the idea of reaching out. She was cautious, naturally protective of her time and boundaries, yet something urged her to make contact. She wanted to know more about him, about the life behind the music that had so unexpectedly stirred her heart. After a few moments of hesitation, she decided to send a brief message through the organizer of the event, requesting a small meeting. It was casual, nonchalant, but for her, it carried the weight of hope and curiosity. When he received the message, he was initially surprised. It was not every day that someone of her stature expressed interest in a personal conversation. Yet, he felt a quiet thrill, a sense that their paths crossing again could be meaningful. He agreed, suggesting a local cafe, somewhere neutral, warm, and conducive to conversation. It would be a place where they could talk freely, without the distractions of formal settings or the pressures of appearances. The day of their meeting arrived, and she approached it with a mix of anticipation and caution. She dressed simply, wanting to feel comfortable rather than impressive. As she entered the cafe, she spotted him immediately. He was already there, sitting near a window, a small smile on his face, as if expecting her. The familiarity of that smile, combined with the memory of his music, made her heart beat faster. It was a strange sensation, bridging past and present, recognition and curiosity. They greeted each other with a warmth that felt effortless, as if the brief moments shared during the event had laid the groundwork for a genuine connection. Ordering coffee, they settled into a quiet corner, allowing the hum of the cafe to provide a gentle backdrop. The conversation began lightly, touching on everyday topics, the rhythm of life, and the small joys that often went unnoticed. Yet, beneath the surface, there was an unspoken understanding, a recognition of the shared experience that had brought them together. She asked him about his music, genuinely curious about how he had discovered the song and why it had resonated with him so deeply. He explained how he had come across it years ago, how the melody had stayed with him through different stages of life, and how playing it now felt like sharing a part of himself he could not put into words. She listened intently, feeling a deeper connection with someone who expressed emotion so freely, who communicated with sincerity rather than pretense. In turn, he asked about her life beyond work, about the pressures of leadership and the personal moments that shaped her. She found herself opening up, sharing stories and experiences she rarely revealed, moments of vulnerability intertwined with her drive and ambition. There was no judgment in his eyes, only curiosity and respect. It was rare for her to feel understood in this way, and she savored the simplicity of being able to speak honestly without carefully measuring every word. As the conversation continued, they discovered unexpected commonalities. Both valued authenticity, connection, and the small, meaningful gestures that often went unnoticed. Both had faced challenges that shaped their perspectives and had learned to find beauty in ordinary moments. The discussion flowed naturally, laughter and thoughtful pauses interspersed with moments of reflection. Each revelation, each shared memory, created a subtle bond that grew stronger with every passing minute. At one point, he shared a story about his child, a funny incident from the week that had left them both laughing. She felt warmth and admiration as she listened, seeing the dedication and love in his words. It was clear that his life, though different from hers, was filled with intentionality and care. She felt a quiet reassurance in his presence, a sense of stability and trustworthiness that was both comforting and inspiring. She reciprocated by telling him about a memory connected to the song he had played. It was a tender story from her past, one that she had rarely revisited, about the person who had originally written the melody and the emotions it had carried. He listened without interruption, giving her the space to speak fully, and she felt a sense of relief in sharing this memory with someone who could appreciate its significance. There was no rush, no pressure, just the two of them, connecting over shared understanding and genuine curiosity. The cafe slowly began to fill with the afternoon crowd, yet their corner remained a small island of calm and focus. Time seemed to move differently when they were together, each moment stretched by attention and presence. She realized that she had not felt this sense of ease with someone in a long time, a feeling that was rare and precious in her busy life. He, too, felt the subtle magic of the encounter, recognizing that some connections were unexpected but profoundly meaningful. After a while, the conversation naturally shifted to music again. He spoke about how melodies could carry emotion, how certain tunes could unlock memories and feelings that words often could not. She shared how the song had reminded her of the joys and innocence of her younger days, and how it had quietly shaped her understanding of love and connection. They both acknowledged the unexpected power of music to create bridges between people, to bring together past and present in ways that felt almost magical. As the afternoon waned, neither wanted the meeting to end, but they knew that the responsibilities of life would call them back. They agreed to keep in touch, exchanging details and promising to meet again, not out of obligation, but because of a genuine desire to continue exploring the connection that had begun so unexpectedly. There was a sense of anticipation, a quiet excitement for the possibilities that lay ahead. Leaving the cafe, she felt lighter, more present, and quietly hopeful. The memory of the melody lingered in her mind, intertwined with the memory of the conversation and the warmth of his presence. She realized that sometimes life offered moments that could not be planned, that connections could appear when least expected, and that the simplest gestures, like playing a song, could have profound impact. For him, the day carried its own significance. He returned home to his child with a sense of satisfaction, knowing that the encounter had been meaningful not just for her but for him as well. The conversation, the shared stories, and the warmth of genuine understanding had reminded him why he valued connection and authenticity above all else. He played small snippets of the melody that evening, watching his child listen with curiosity, knowing that music could communicate what words sometimes could not. As night fell, both reflected on the unfolding story between them. It was a story that had begun with a simple act, a melody played on a piano, but had opened doors to memories, emotions, and possibilities neither had expected. There was a sense of continuation, a feeling that this was just the beginning of something meaningful, built not on grand gestures but on understanding, shared experience, and the quiet, persistent pull of human connection. The song remained a constant in their thoughts, a reminder that life could be surprising, that genuine encounters could transform ordinary days, and that the threads of memory, emotion, and music could weave together in unexpected, beautiful ways. Each carried the other's presence in their mind, a gentle echo that promised more chapters, more stories, and more shared moments to come. The next meeting between them was arranged on a quiet afternoon, in a small park cafe with sunlight streaming through large windows. The setting was simple, intimate, and calm, giving them space to continue where their previous conversation had left off. She arrived a little early, taking a seat at a corner table, her thoughts running ahead to what they might discuss. The memory of his music, the melody that had sparked everything, was still vivid in her mind, playing quietly like a backdrop to her reflections. When he arrived, carrying a small bag with his usual calm demeanor, she felt a rush of warmth and familiarity. They greeted each other with smiles that were genuine and easy, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had begun to form. It was remarkable how comfortable it felt to be around someone so new, yet somehow not entirely unfamiliar. The day was clear and bright, and the air seemed lighter, as if the world itself recognized the significance of their meeting. They ordered coffee, and the conversation naturally flowed into stories of their everyday lives. He spoke about moments with his child, small victories, and challenges that required patience and attention. She listened, genuinely engaged, admiring the dedication and thoughtfulness that shaped his world. There was something quietly inspiring about how he managed responsibilities with love and care, how he found joy in ordinary moments that many overlooked. She, in turn, shared glimpses of her own life beyond the corporate exterior. There were pressures, expectations, and responsibilities that weighed heavily, yet she also spoke of small pleasures, quiet victories, and the moments that reminded her why she worked so hard. He listened with undivided attention, never interrupting, giving her space to reveal herself without fear of judgment. In that, she felt a rare comfort, a chance to exist fully without the usual constraints of her professional life. After a while, the conversation returned to music. He spoke about the impact melodies could have on people, how a single tune could evoke memories, stir emotions, and even change the course of a day. She found herself smiling, realizing how true it was in her own experience. That melody, played by his hands, had awakened emotions she had long suppressed and reminded her of the capacity for connection, even in the most unexpected ways. Curiosity got the better of her, and she asked, "Do you ever play for people who need comfort or hope, beyond just the events or home?" He nodded slowly. "Sometimes, music can reach places words cannot. I try to play when I feel it might help someone, even if I don't know them personally. It's about sharing something real, something human." She considered this, thinking about the times she had felt isolated despite her success, and how a simple gesture of understanding could have made a profound difference. The way he spoke about music reflected a deeper philosophy, one rooted in empathy and authenticity. She admired it silently, feeling that their conversation was touching more than just memories. It was shaping her perspective in subtle, meaningful ways. At one point, he reached into his bag and pulled out a small notebook filled with sheet music and notes. He flipped through the pages, showing her compositions he had been working on, melodies that captured feelings and stories he had not yet shared aloud. She watched in quiet awe, impressed not just by the skill, but by the emotion woven into each note. There was honesty in his work, a reflection of life lived with care and attention, and she found herself drawn deeper into the world he inhabited. She shared a memory of her first love, not in detail, but enough to convey the significance of the song and the emotions tied to it. His expression softened as he listened, and for a moment, there was a quiet understanding that transcended words. He did not ask questions that might probe too deeply. Instead, he allowed her to speak freely, honoring the vulnerability she displayed. It was a delicate balance of respect and empathy, something she had rarely experienced with anyone outside her immediate circle. The conversation drifted naturally into dreams and hopes for the future. She spoke of the desire for balance, for moments of genuine connection that went beyond professional achievement. He spoke of the desire to nurture, to provide a stable and loving environment for his child, and to continue creating music that could touch people's lives. Each revelation was met with understanding and encouragement, building trust and mutual respect. They took a short walk after leaving the cafe, enjoying the crisp air and quiet streets. The discussion continued, now more casual, with laughter and light-hearted anecdotes mingling with thoughtful reflections. She found herself appreciating the simplicity of the moment, the ease of walking alongside someone whose presence felt grounding and comforting. He, too, seemed to savor the interaction, recognizing a rare connection that went beyond superficial conversation. As they paused near a small fountain, she hesitated before speaking. "I still can't believe how much that song affected me. Hearing it again, after so many years, felt like finding a part of myself I had forgotten." He smiled gently. Music has a way of uncovering hidden things, reminding us of what's important. "I didn't know it would mean so much to you, but I'm glad it did." The moment felt suspended, a quiet acknowledgement of shared experience and understanding. She realized that the connection they were building was not just about the melody, but about the empathy, respect, and authenticity that underpinned it. It was rare to find someone who could listen without judgment, who could engage with the past and present simultaneously, and who could make space for another person's feelings without trying to control them. Over the next hour, they found themselves revisiting various topics, from favorite books to childhood memories, from small victories to personal challenges. The conversation was fluid, natural, and deeply human. There was no rush, no pressure to impress or perform. Each word, each gesture, seemed to strengthen the invisible thread connecting them. Eventually, they sat on a park bench, watching the sunlight play on the water. The quiet intimacy of the moment allowed for reflection, and she felt a sense of peace that had been elusive in her busy life. He seemed to sense the significance of the pause, offering quiet companionship rather than conversation, and she appreciated the gesture. Sometimes silence, after all, could speak volumes. Before parting ways, they agreed to meet again soon. There was a mutual understanding that this connection, unexpected and profound, was worth exploring further. Neither of them knew what the future held, but both felt a sense of hope and anticipation. The story that had begun with a simple piano melody was unfolding in real time, guided by curiosity, respect, and the quiet power of shared humanity. She walked away feeling lighter, her thoughts still carrying the warmth of the afternoon. The melody and the conversation had created a space within her that felt open, receptive, and alive. It was a reminder that meaningful connections could occur at any time, that the smallest gestures could resonate deeply, and that life could still surprise her in beautiful, unexpected ways. He returned to his own routine, reflecting on the day with a sense of quiet satisfaction. The interaction had been more than a simple meeting. It had been a meaningful exchange that reaffirmed his belief in connection, authenticity, and the power of sharing one's life openly. The melody that had started it all remained in his mind, a thread linking past and present, memory and hope. As evening approached, both carried the sense of possibility with them. The song, the conversations, and the shared moments had opened a door, one that neither had expected but both felt compelled to explore. There was no rush, no forced outcomes, only the gentle unfolding of a story rooted in human connection, shared understanding, and the quiet magic of a melody that could bridge years, emotions, and lives. The days that followed their meetings were filled with quiet reflection for both of them. Each carried the memory of their conversations and the melody that had first brought them together. She returned to her work with a renewed sense of clarity, noticing the little moments she had previously overlooked, finding joy in simple interactions, and feeling a subtle shift in her perspective on life. The memory of the melody played by him remained a comforting presence, reminding her of the power of small, meaningful gestures. For him, the music continued to serve as a bridge between past and present. He played small portions of the melody for his child, sharing the joy and emotion it carried. Each time he played, he thought of her reaction, the way her eyes had reflected surprise and nostalgia, and he felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that a song could connect lives in ways words sometimes could not. It reinforced his belief that music was more than just sound. It was a medium of shared human experience. They kept in touch, exchanging messages and planning more casual meetups that allowed them to deepen their understanding of one another. Each interaction revealed more about their personalities, their values, and the worlds they inhabited. She admired his dedication to his child and the patience with which he approached life. He admired her intelligence, resilience, and the way she navigated a demanding world without losing sight of her own humanity. One afternoon, they met again at a quiet park, choosing a bench under a large tree where the sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting patterns on the ground. It was a place that invited reflection, conversation, and a sense of calm away from the hustle of everyday responsibilities. They walked together briefly, then settled into the bench, enjoying the gentle rustle of the wind and the occasional chirp of birds. The conversation began lightly, as it often did, touching on the ordinary parts of life. Yet, beneath the surface, there was a growing sense of connection and understanding. They spoke about the past, the memories that shaped them, and the ways they had learned to cope with challenges. She shared moments of vulnerability, recounting experiences that had taught her resilience and compassion. He listened with quiet attentiveness, offering empathy rather than advice, and she felt understood in a way she had rarely experienced. As the afternoon stretched on, they naturally returned to the subject of music. He pulled a small notebook from his bag and showed her some of his compositions. Each piece was accompanied by a brief note about the inspiration behind it, reflecting the thoughtfulness and emotion he poured into his craft. She watched intently, recognizing the care and passion that went into each melody, and felt a deeper connection to the person who had created them. She asked him about the first time he had played the melody for a larger audience. He recounted the event with modesty, focusing on the joy it brought to others rather than his own skill. She smiled, appreciating the humility that accompanied his talent. It was rare to find someone so gifted who valued the impact of their work on others more than recognition or accolades. In turn, he asked her about her experiences with music beyond that one memorable evening. She shared a few recollections from her past, moments when music had provided comfort, inspiration, or a sense of escape. They discussed the ways melodies could evoke emotions, create connections, and even heal wounds that words could not reach. Each shared experience strengthened the bond between them, building a foundation of mutual understanding and respect. As the conversation deepened, they explored their hopes and dreams for the future. She spoke of her desire to find balance, to cultivate relationships that were meaningful and authentic, and to create space for the simple joys of life that often went overlooked. He shared his vision of providing a loving and nurturing environment for his child, continuing to play music that touched others, and maintaining the integrity and authenticity that guided his life. Their aspirations, though different in context, shared a common thread of care, connection, and sincerity. The afternoon sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting warm hues across the park. They walked slowly, savoring the moments, sharing stories, and laughing at small, shared jokes. The ease of their interaction was remarkable, a natural flow that felt both comforting and invigorating. Each step, each gesture, and each word contributed to a growing sense of partnership and understanding. At one point, he stopped near a quiet fountain and looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and warmth. "Do you ever think about how unexpected moments can change everything?" he asked. She smiled softly. "All the time. Sometimes a single day, a single conversation, or even a melody can open doors we didn't know existed. It's the little things that have the biggest impact." He nodded, as if confirming a thought he had long held. "I believe that melody, it wasn't just music. It was a bridge to something bigger, something meaningful. And meeting you, it feels like that bridge is just the beginning." She felt a surge of emotion, realizing how true his words were. The melody had indeed been more than music. It had been a starting point for a connection that was rare and valuable. She appreciated the simplicity and honesty of the statement, feeling a warmth that went beyond the words themselves. As evening approached, they found a quiet spot on a hill overlooking the city, where the lights began to twinkle as the sun disappeared. They sat in companionable silence for a few moments, taking in the view, letting the day's experiences settle into memory. It was a peaceful, grounding moment, one that allowed both of them to reflect on the journey that had brought them to this point. Eventually, they stood and began walking back toward the main path, the conversation turning to lighter topics, stories of their childhood, and small anecdotes from daily life. Laughter punctuated their words, blending seamlessly with the gentle sounds of the evening. The mood was one of quiet joy, a shared recognition of the simple pleasures and meaningful moments that life could offer. Before parting ways, they exchanged a look that conveyed more than words could express. There was mutual respect, curiosity, and an unspoken promise to continue exploring the connection that had begun so unexpectedly. They did not rush the moment, allowing it to linger naturally, savoring the sense of possibility that hung in the air. Walking away, she felt a renewed sense of hope and presence. The memory of the melody and the time spent with him remained vivid, a comforting thread weaving through her thoughts. She realized that life's surprises could be beautiful, that connections could arise from the most unexpected sources, and that genuine moments of understanding and empathy were invaluable. He returned home to his child, carrying with him a sense of satisfaction and anticipation. The encounters, conversations, and shared experiences had reinforced his belief in the power of connection and the importance of living authentically. The melody that had first brought them together remained a quiet, persistent presence in his mind, a reminder that some connections were destined to unfold in meaningful ways. Over the next days and weeks, they continued to meet occasionally, each encounter building on the last. The story that began with a single piano melody had grown into a narrative of mutual respect, shared experiences, and deepening connection. Neither rushed, allowing the relationship to develop naturally, guided by curiosity, empathy, and a shared appreciation for the small but profound moments that life offered. Eventually, they found themselves reflecting on how a simple act, a melody played with sincerity and care, had opened doors to new understanding and companionship. It was a reminder that life was full of surprises, that meaningful connections could appear when least expected, and that human experiences, shared openly and honestly, held a power beyond words. In the end, they both recognized that the journey had only just begun, a story of authenticity, connection, and the quiet magic of life unfolding in its own time.